Greetings and welcome to this little talk. Sometimes I just do talks. I hope that doesn't disturb anyone, but that's just kind of my style. A couple of things. I realize my mic quality isn't always that great, and I will do something to improve that. I most likely will procure a new microphone. The thing is, I always have used my microphone built into my laptop because it's cheap and cost effective, but it might be a better idea to actually get a proper mic that you plug in. Okay, there's that. Another thing is I will be continue to produce guides, but I have a lot of real-life things and issues that I need to take care of in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so it's possible only 1 or 2 might come out. So sometimes these things happen and it's hard to keep up the pace. Anyway, so this is kind of a follow-up to what sort of the thoughts on the pre-platinum video that I made. And I think we've all gotten a taste of platinum by now, and we've all played, and many of us have gotten full extraction, and I just wanted to offer my thoughts on this, and I think in large measure these thoughts echo the thoughts of others, my teammates and people on BioWare Sociopathy Forum Network and so on and so forth. So let's try to summarize platinum. And platinum, unfortunately, is really horde mode par excellence. It really is just a bunch of really powerful, high health, high armor, high shielded enemies coming at you en masse, and I have to say that gold is simply far more fun. Platinum, up to this date, maybe people will come up with solutions, simply revolves around staying in one spot. It's a lot of camping because you can't afford to run around, and you do need to work together, which I like, but on the other hand, there really are only certain kinds of classes and options available to be effective, I'd say. So for example, the 2 platinum videos I've already published, and one involved the 2 demolishers and 2 destroyers, and the one I posted yesterday, quite similar, except I was using a Turian soldier. We still have 2 demolishers. And if there were such a thing as platinum farming, I suppose that would be the way to go. You just camp and you have your pylon, and you have 2 characters that produce a huge amount of DPS. But the question that arises from all of this is, what about all the other fun characters that were very effective, useful, and super fun on gold? Let me give you an example. The new Slayer Vanguard. I love that guy on gold. I do think his melee needs a buff. I also think his melee needs a better targeting system. It takes a lot of practice to actually make it work, and sometimes even with practice it doesn't. But it's a very, very fun class, particularly for picking off single targets, basically trash troops, centurions, marauders, even the occasional phantom. I run it on a melee build, but that build is completely ineffective on platinum. I mean, you'll be lucky if you can melee 2, 3, 4 marauders or centurions during the whole match, because it's horde mode. You have a lot of massive enemies coming at you, and you can't just melee 2 brutes and 2 banshees approaching you. You'll die. It's a bad idea. This is a perfect example of a class that's very effective, very fun on gold, and becomes, well, essentially unviable or non-applicable on platinum. And I see that as an issue. I haven't tried some of the older classes. What if you were to run a melee-based Krogan Sentinel? Useless on platinum. Because the key to defeating platinum is having an enormously high DPS. It's not even survivability, because nothing survives. I mean, the only thing that can kind of survive, of course, is a Crow Guard. But even then, the destroyer is pretty tough, but it gets taken down pretty quickly on platinum. No, you need a high DPS, because the enemies are producing a high DPS. The only counter for that, of course, is a high DPS. The only way you can produce a high DPS is to use super, super powerful weapons on characters that have special abilities for rate of fire, accuracy, and damage. For example, Turian Soldier, Destroyer, maybe the Geth Infiltrator, and so on and so forth. Am I going to say that Platinum is unbeatable without that kind of setup? Of course not. Of course it's beatable, but I suspect you'd be taking a lot longer. Of course, there are other viable characters in Platinum, the Paladin, but DPS-wise, you're just not going to get to that the level of, say, a Turian Soldier with the right weapon or a Destroyer with the right weapon. So, having said that, DPS isn't everything. I mean, the Paladin certainly, as an example, can fill a role as off-tank, draw aggro. He's got very good crowd control abilities that are still useful in Platinum, energy drain. I gotta say, at the moment, the Paladin's probably my favorite class. And then Snap Breeze is a very good power as well. The shield is quite good. I actually run it on a melee build, and even on Platinum. But a lot of characters have been lost in the mass of Platinum, unfortunately. So where did BioWare go wrong? I think BioWare did something very simple-minded. I think it's very poor design. Instead of increasing AI, for example, what they could have done is increase the rate at which Cerberus troops throw grenades, so you're forced to dodge and be more mobile. This is an example, more often. Just one example. Then, trying to think of maybe enemies would move more quickly or advance more quickly at you. I don't have an issue giving them more health or being more damaging, but basically throwing just a horde of boss enemies at you non-stop, it smacks of lack of creativity. In fact, it's not creative at all. I have a feeling that people at BioWare just said, "Oh, we just need a lot of powerful enemies." But as I said, the problem is enemy classes that specialize at picking off, single trash troop units. Sorry, Vanguard, for example, the new Vanguard, and I would argue the Shadow as well. The Shadow is very fun. It's the only infiltrator class I really enjoy using, but you're not going to be able to compete with the GI. It's impossible. Why? Because your bread and butter power is a single target melee, and it's good. It can kill almost anything, even on Platinum. Well, not on Platinum. I mean, you can't kill a Banshee in one shot or an Atlas, but you're not going to be able to compete DPS. So any class that doesn't produce a massive DPS on Platinum is going to be not that good. But it's very fun. Still, as a class that can't take out multiple targets in a couple of seconds, you're not going to be able to do that well with it. Sure, you can still be useful. You can run around and res people and what have you, but that's limiting, and that's a limited role. Lots of classes have simply become, well, fairly useless. I would say, as a brief overview of the new classes that we have, the Destroyer and the Demolisher are perhaps the best classes in the game for different reasons. The Demolisher gives you an unending supply of ammo. So, for example, if you have a Harrier that uses a Harrier, the biggest issue with the Harrier is the lack of ammo. That problem is solved with a Demolisher. In fact, it's so solved that I think Zeke and some other people, that room in Glacier, they literally camped there with a Demolisher and basically two Sentinels. This is on Platinum, and they made it to wave 10 or something, or just after wave 10. It was just ridiculous. I wasn't there, but so that's problem solved. And Destroyer has potentially the highest DPS in the game, even more so than the GI. Overall damage, and he's a lot sturdier. He's immune to staggers, completely immune to stun lock. He has a lot of advantages. I still prefer the Turian Soldier, but that's just my preference. So those are the ultra top tier classes. The Sentinel is very good. The Paladin, it can't compete DPS wise or in terms of overall utility with the others, but it's very useful. It's got crowd control abilities that are useful on every level. The Fury. The Fury is excellent. The Fury is Platinum viable if played properly, but the problem with Biotics is based on what I haven't tried it yet, but I spoke to Spectre once, and he said they tried all Biotic team on Platinum, and they failed miserably, which suggests, and these, Spectre's the best player on PC, and I'm sure he was playing with very good players, and this suggests, for example, that that really the only thing at the moment that works is getting your demolishers together with a Turian soldier or a demolisher, destroyer, and just shooting things to death, which is really disappointing because Platinum shouldn't be about just limiting yourself to only a certain setup. It's fine to have builds that are more effective than others, but when you have builds and classes that outshine other classes and builds in every respect to the point where they're the only viable ones, or the most viable ones, where, for example, I forgot what I think we had like a 25-minute time on that video the other day, where, for example, if you were to run biotics or single target kind of sneaky characters like the Slayer Vanguard, it would take 50 minutes if you're lucky. It's exaggerated, but that's not good game design. It's simply not good game design. So Platinum, unfortunately, I play Platinum for the credits, and like sometimes it's a nice challenge, I guess. But originally thinking that I would only play Platinum, I didn't know what it would be about. I didn't realize it would just be monster horde mode, and you would be so limited. So I have to say, these days I kind of play a 50-50 gold platinum. I mean, gold it is a bit easy, but it's I can play different kinds of characters and still enjoy it. I can still die pretty easily. I still burn up metagel. So these are things that unfortunately are just not available on Platinum. I don't even bother to use my Vanguard on Platinum anymore. I've tried so many times because I don't care about score, but I cannot contribute to the DPS. Whereas on Gold, there are a lot of Centurions, Marauders running around, Cannibals, Husks, and I can easily teleport, sword slash them to death, and I can pick off enemies, and it's useful. I can even take on Phantoms, but can I take on Phantoms, Brutes, Atlases, Banshees at once? No. The only thing that can do that is a powerful weapon with a character with a high rate of fire and damage output. Simply just the way it is. I think Biotics could work. I haven't tried it yet. Maybe I will, or we will at some point in time. But clearly the Fury is probably the best overall Biotic in the game. I guess eventually I'll get around to doing a guide. I don't know what guide I'll be doing next, to be honest. I'm still exploring things. But, yeah, so it's, unfortunately, Platinum has been a rather large disappointment. It's simply not that fun. Most of the time I end up playing a couple of gold games and then we just do one Platinum run. Because it's just tedious. It's not... as I said, I made suggestions as to what BioWare could have done differently. Like I said, throw the grenades more often, make the enemies more aggressive, you could still combine the enemies, have Centurions throw smoke grenades in front of Reaper units, or Geth intentionally, and so on and so forth. Or Nemesis, change the AI on the Nemesis, make them more aggressive. Even better, give the Nemesis a backup arm. Give them a submachine gun. Why shouldn't they carry a Hornet with them? So they can fire at you when you're approaching them. Just as an example, Nemesis, Gold, or whatever. I don't think there are Nemesis on Platinum, to my knowledge. But Gold and Nemesis are pretty harmless. Yeah, they can pick you off at range. If you were to give them a Hornet and let them fire the same way that an Assault Trooper does, that would be pretty dangerous. You wouldn't just be walking up and killing them. So it's clearly just an issue of, there's so many issues where BioWare is just, I'm sorry, it's horrible game design. The other day I was talking to Zeke about lack of Turian role. Zeke actually knows quite a lot about coding. I know nothing, unfortunately. But he told me it would take a max of maybe 1, 2, 3 hours to put in Turian rolling ability into the game, considering the role was already in there for cover rolling. Why doesn't BioWare do it? Who knows? Pure laziness. The other issue is there's so many new bugs. The invisible bug, the teleporting characters, Vanguard, Slayer, and Fury Adept, they they're invisible. If you get a bug, it's just ridiculous. So Platinum is a large disappointment, and for the most part, sometimes it's fun for the. Is it really a challenge just sitting there camping and destroying everything? I think the real challenge will come if people are able to work together, but not in such a forced, cohesive manner where everyone really needs to stay in one spot. So I've tried not doing that, and you just die way too easily. No character can take punishment. In fact, a lot of builds just, I mean, whether you spec fitness for melee or all fitness or go no fitness, totally irrelevant on Platinum, for the most part, depending on the character. Anyway, these are my thoughts on Platinum. I wish they had done a different job, applied different principles to it. But who knows? Maybe in time they'll come up with some better ideas, improve the AI. It's just they see how popular multiplayer is. They could do so many things to improve it. I mean, they've improved some of the bugs, but for example, just as an example, I think this is good. When I use the Grawl as an off host, I don't have the same latency lag issues that I used to sometimes, but not nearly as bad as they used to be. So who knows? We'll see what happens going forward. Like I said, I have to take a brief hiatus because of real life stuff that I won't be able to play as often, and if I can't play as often, it means I can't test the characters, come up with guides, but I will be around, and thanks for watching, and I will try to get a new mic in case, well, I'll try to get a new mic. Anyway, take care.